guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Tess and I talk about South Asian books, films and culture on my channel, and today's video is about a really fascinating time period of films, the silent era of Indian films. This video was kind of inspired by a Hollywood movie that I watched in 2022 called Babylon, and if you've not watched Babylon, I suggest that you do. I find this era of filmmaking quite interesting, and I love reading about the silent film era and the early transition to talkies or sound films. Babylon is a period film that follows the rise and the fall of multiple characters during Hollywood's transition from silent film to sound films in the late 1920s. And a lot of the characters in the film have real life inspiration. So, for example, Margo Robbie's character is inspired by a combination of silent film stars. And she actually stated that she based her character predominantly on the it girl of the Hollywood silent film era, an actress named Clara Bow. And Brad Pitt is also in the film. I think it's really important to note that Babylon was not a commercial success. And I think that there are a lot of factors regarding why it failed. The timing of the release, the length of the film, also received an R rating, and there was really uninspired marketing for the film. But it is a really interesting film, and just to warn you guys, the first 20 minutes of the film is pretty shocking, and it depicts a lot of debauchery. Essentially, to me, it's just a really fascinating time period in film history as a topic, and this film made me curious about India's silent film era. I recently visited the National Museum of Indian Cinema in Mumbai, and lucky for me, I got some answers. The National Museum of Indian Cinema has a really well put together exhibit on the silent film era in India. The museum also has information and exhibits on the origin of cinema, cinema's arrival in India, the advent of sound in Indian films, and different regional film histories. If you are a cinema lover, I think this museum is such a great place to visit. I mean, I could have spent my entire day at this museum because I found it so thought-provoking. The picture of me at the museum having an amazing time, and these are some pictures from the museum. I was wearing this t-shirt with the movie poster Devta on it, and it was a big success with people at the museum. They kind of recognized it. This video is on India's silent film era. It's a 3-part series. This is part 1, where I wanted to really just discuss background into a very vibrant time period in Indian film history. So let us get into it. India's silent film era starts in the year 1913 and ends in the year 1934. Silent era of Indian films ended with the introduction of talkies. This is a reference to sound films. Talkies changed cinema forever by synchronizing moving images with sound, transforming silent films into an auditory experience, including music, dialogues, and other forms of sound. The interest of the Indian public in cinema and films progressed pretty gradually from silent films to talkies. It seemed that for most of its evolution, the subject of cinema evoked curiosity in people. When moving pictures became more accessible to more people, there was naturally a sense of curiosity surrounding moving pictures. What are these moving pictures that everyone is talking about? What kind of experience is it actually watching a moving picture? The era of silent films in India produced around 1,329 films. These films dealt with various topics, including films based on the Hindu religion and storytelling. Unfortunately, a lot of Indian silent films are no longer available today. There are reportedly only 20 that survived. Some examples of Indian silent films included Raja Harish Chandra, Lanka Dahan, Shiraz, and Shakuntala. According to a 2021 article for Outlook India, before the talkies came around, Indian films were not segregated by language. The intertitles or title cards, which flash dialogues and description on screen, were written in one language as well as English, and that's the extent of language language distinction. Almost 30 odd years of silent cinema between the 1890s and the early 1930s was one of the most unique and fascinating chapters in the history of film in India. Interestingly, it was in July 1896 that cinema actually came to India, barely 6 months after the first ever film was screened in Paris by the Lumiere brothers. On the 7th of July, 1896, the Lumiere brothers, through a representative, presented 6 films at the Watson Hotel in Bombay. Inspired by the novelty, some Indians started to make short films. H.S. Patwadekar and Hiralal Sen shot the earliest films in India with hand-cranked cameras. J.F. Madan subsequently established the Elphinstone Bioscope Company in Calcutta. As time passed, film screenings were held in open spaces or makeshift tents and resulted in the phenomenon of traveling cinema in India. Eventually, permanent cinema halls in various parts of India were established. Cinema halls screened foreign films and films by Indian filmmakers. I think it's also very important to recognize the immensely talented actors of the Indian silent film era. To cite material from the National Museum of Indian Cinema, the soundless films of the Indian silent era brought into limelight immensely talented actors who are among the first to contend for the elusive status of stars. With equal ease and subtleness, they portrayed the full range of wordless emotions. Their handsome countenance and sublime expressions commanded a fan following that persisted well into the talkie era. Master Vital, D. Billy Moria, E. Billy Moria, Himanshu Rai, V. Shantaram, Raja Sandow, Durgadas Banerjee, Jayraj, Prithviraj Kapoor, Charu Roy, and many others remain the fearless noble hero loved by all. So I think that one of the most interesting aspects of the Indian silent film era is the insight into the actresses or the heroines of the Indian silent film era, as set out by source material from the National Museum of Indian Cinema. In the early days, due to lack of female actors, the female roles in films were played by male actors. In Raja Harish Chandra, the first Indian full-length feature film, Phalke, the director, enrolled soft-looking Anna Saluke in a female role. Nevertheless, Phalke enrolled the indomitable mother-daughter duo Durgabai and Kamlabai in Mohini Bhasmasur, making them the first women to act in Indian cinema. Phalke's daughter Mandakini, the first child star, played the role of a young Krishna in Sri Krishna Janme. One notable feature of the Indian silent era film was the presence of many actresses of Anglo-Indian and foreign origin. Celebrated among them were Sulochana, Ruby Myers, Patience Cooper, Sita Devi, Renee Smith, Dorothy Kingdom, Madhuri, Beryl Clausen, Rampiari, Rose, and others donning Indian names. Among the others famous was Zubaida, Zebunisa, Gohar, and Sushilabai. So there was also this really very interesting advertisement included in the exhibit at the National Museum of Indian Cinema from the time looking for women to act in silent films. And this was what it said. It said, "Wanted cultured ladies only for a leading role in Bhai Behen. If you dream of shining on the film firmament as a star and wish to see your dream come true, apply with photograph." Faisal Brothers Limited, Ratan Villa, Vincent Square, Dadar, Bombay. So interestingly, in 2022, a 101-year-old film titled Behula, featuring possibly one of Bollywood's earliest superstars, Patience Cooper, was restored in a film lab in Paris. Patience Cooper was famous in Indian cinema for her Hollywood look, as set out in a 2022 Times of India article. Famous for her striking Hollywood looks, Cooper was one of Kolkata's earliest gifts to Bollywood. Born in the city in 1902, she was the best known of the Cooper sisters, Patience, Violet, and Pearl, and started out as a stage dancer. Like Ruby Myers, aka Salochana, she belonged to the generation of modern actresses whose European look and education brought them immense popularity. Cooper starred in over 40 films till 1944 and was the first actress to feature in a double role in Indian cinema. In Patni Pratap, 1923, where she played two sisters, and Kashmiri Sundari, 1924, where she played mother and daughter. Despite Cooper's huge body of work, Behula happens to be her only surviving film. Prakash Magdam, former director of the National Film Archive, describes Cooper as fantastic. She came from a Parsi theatre background. She has a significant role in Behula. Her styling and outfits were modern, he said. So according to academics and reputable sources, the title for the first Indian full-length feature film goes to the very deserving 1913 film called Raja Harish Chandra, directed and produced by the renowned Indian director Dadasaheb Phalke. But there is a debate in some circles surrounding this topic, and there is a more nuanced discussion regarding this particular topic where some writers and academics consider other pieces of film technically as the first Indian film. Let's discuss some of the other points of view. One view is that the first Indian film is actually a moving picture screened called The Wrestlers. Argument is illustrated in this article for Outlook India. Consequently, the first Indian film to be screened in India was Harish Chandra Sakharam Bhattadevkar's footage of a wrestling match in Bombay's Hanging Gardens. For all intents and purposes, The Wrestlers was the first ever Indian film. In the following months, a whole bunch of enterprising men in various parts of the country joined this emerging field. Among them, Hiralal Sen, who shot plays being staged at the Classic Theatre in Calcutta. Sen's films were probably the earliest examples of indigenous narrative cinema, with some semblance of a storyline. In 1902, Jamshedji Ramji Madan started showing films inside a tent in Calcutta's Maidan. He would soon set up the Elphinstone Bioscope Company, which would dominate the film production business in India for a while. At the time Dadasaheb Phalke's Raja Harish Chandra flickered on screen for the first time in 1913, Indian cinema was already more than a decade and a half old. But what Phalke's films did was set the ball rolling for the first slew of feature films in India. The view that is commonly considered is that the 1912 Marathi film Shri Pundalik could be considered as the first ever Indian film. Shri Pundalik was released on May 18, 1912 and set out by an online article for News 18 India. Pundalik was released almost a year before Dadasaheb Phalke released his full-length film Raja Harish Chandra. The silent film was directed by Ram Chandra Gopal Torne, also known as Dadasaheb Torne. Film, negatives about 1,500 feet and 22 minutes long, was sent to London for processing. It was based on a Marathi play. Unfortunately, a lot of things about the film are unknown apart from the fact that it was based on the life of a Hindu saint. Many film fanatics argue that Shri Pundalik does not deserve the honor of being called the first Indian film because it was a photographic recording of a popular Marathi play. The cameraman was a British national and the film was processed in London. Many people also claim that Dadasaheb Phalke's Raja Harish Chandra is more deserving for being the first Indian film as it was the silent film truly made in India. The National Museum of Indian Cinema, there is an exhibit of the advertisement in the Times of India dated the 12th of May 1912 announcing the screening of the first feature film of India, Pundalik by Dadasaheb Torne. Essentially, Shri Pundalik was a recording of a play with a fixed camera, but because the film's production was done in London and the film had a British camera person, it takes away really the Made in India identifier from Shri Pundalik. This discussion and debate, while very interesting, can be settled when one considers the distinction in the terminology of what constitutes a feature film that is truly made in India. When considering the first feature film in Indian cinema history, the answer which seems to deserve that title the most would be Raja Harish Chandra. But I do also think it's very interesting to discuss these aspects of film history and of Indian film history, and it's important to reference these other films because they contributed to the evolution of Indian film history as well. Discussed previously, most scholarly articles and reputable scholars agree that Raja Harish Chandra is the most deserving of the title as the first Indian full-length feature film. Raja Harish Chandra's runtime is around 40 minutes and was made by an entirely Indian cast and crew. The production took 7 months and 21 days to complete. The film premiered at the Olympia Theatre in Bombay on the 21st of April 1913, where press and other famous guests were invited. And later it had a theatrical public release on the 3rd of May 1913 at the Coronation Cinema in Bombay. The film essentially tells the story of King Harish, Chandra, a legendary ruler of ancient India with elements based on the Hindu religion and storytelling. The film was a major commercial success and basically established the potential of the Indian film industry, which is booming to this day. It also introduced new filmmaking techniques and technology to Indian filmmaking at the time, and essentially created a new profession for Indians to aspire to, one in films and one in the filmmaking world. The film was directed, edited, scripted, produced, and distributed by Dadasaheb Phalke. Phalke was a multi-talented individual. He was a creative genius. The impact and importance of this film and Phalke on the Indian film industry and Indian film history is so great that this director, Dadasaheb Phalke, is referred to as the father of Indian cinema. Dadasaheb Phalke made Raja Harish Chandra and went on to make 27 short films and 90 full-length films in his career as a filmmaker of nearly 2 decades. Phalke chose his film subject as Raja Harish Chandra for mainly 2 reasons. First, it was one of the most popular stories played on stage at the time, and second, he was highly inspired by Raja Ravi Varma's paintings of the story. Dadasaheb Phalke led an extremely interesting life. He was a student at a prestigious art school in British India, and he had a short career as a professional photographer, worked with the Archaeological Survey of India as a draftsman, but he did not enjoy this job and went on to start a printing press. In press, Lakshmi Art Printing Works closely collaborated with the late great painter Raja Ravi Varma. Phalke's creativity and interest in filmmaking started in 1911 after he left the printing press business, as set out in a 2023 Times of India article. Phalke's brush with moving pictures did not happen until 1911, when he had long left the printing press owing to differences. The films Amazing Animals and The Life of Christ left a deep impact on Phalke, who had begun envisioning what it would be like to have similar Indian deities take up the screen and appear to mere mortals in their human forms. The thought seemed both simple and revolutionary, and so Phalke began focusing on making his first full-length feature, completely homegrown, and even visited London for research. He was a founder of his film company, Phalke Films Company, in 1912, and after toiling for almost 8 months, the country got its first silent moving picture in Raja Harish Chandra. Phalke wrote, directed, and produced the feature while his wife Saraswati helped with costume designing and food catering. His eldest son, Bal Chandra, played an important role in the film, making it a complete family affair. Raja Harish Chandra was a success, bringing in money to Phalke's company and boosting him to further his passion of cinema. Thus, the foundation of Indian cinema, as we now know it, was laid in 1913, more than 3 decades before India achieved its independence from British Raj. To make a movie under colonialism, have it be a success, work on it from ground zero, and practically introduce a new art to his fellow citizens is a unique triumph for one man with limited technology at his disposal. According to source material from the National Museum of Indian Cinema, Phalke was also a master in animation and trick photography. Having been trained in the art of magic, Phalke applied that to his films. Creative use of camera and lights, he created fascinating effects. So with the introduction of sound in cinema and the expansion of the film industry, the silent film industry work lost popularity, and there are reports that indicate that even Phalke struggled with this transition to sound films. He left filmmaking in the 1930s and passed away in 1944. In recognition of Phalke's immense and significant contribution to Indian cinema, the Indian government instituted the Dadasaheb Phalke Award in 1969. This award is presented annually for a lifetime contribution to Indian cinema. Some recipients included Amitabh Bachchan, Rajnikant, Lata Mangeshkar, and Yash Chopra. I think that there's really an aspect of the film Babylon that stood out for me and is so relevant to the Indian silent film era as well, and that is the struggle that many artists faced when this transition happened and when sound films kind of took over the industry. In Babylon, we see that Brad Pitt's character really struggles with his fading stardom and this change in the industry, and many stars of the Indian silent era face this as well, as set out in an article by the writer A. Roy Chowdhury Talkie films posed challenges for established stars of silent cinema. They had to have impeccable diction and a presentable voice. In films that never talked, they didn't need those things. Some actors survived the onslaught, like Prithviraj Kapoor, Saurabh Modi, but others were not so lucky. The likes of Master Vital and Sulochana never saw the same levels of success. Soon, a new generation of stars eclipsed the old ones. The eclipse was so absolute that not even a trace remains of the dizzying heights of stardom the first generation of Indian actors witnessed. It's as if they existed in a parallel dimension. That was the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next parts of the series, I want to delve more into the Indian silent film era to start with this kind of introduction to the Indian silent film era, because I think a lot of us don't even think about this era. I mean, before I watched Babylon and before I kind of went to the National Museum of Indian Cinema, I hadn't really thought about this era in Indian film history. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Love to catch up with you guys, and I will see you in the next video very soon.